So Maithripala Sirisena came into power, and it was a very tight election. And notably, if you look at the map, that kind of outlines the way the different districts fell. So the blue fell to the old president, Mahinda Rajapaksa, and the yellow fell to the new president, Maithripala Sirisena. Now notably, the predominantly Tamil North and East voted for the new president. And this has had many different interpretations. What's important to note is during the run-up to the elections, Sirisena's campaign failed to actually acknowledge issues of accountability that the international community were pushing, and failed to acknowledge issues of political self-settlement of the Tamil people. However, he was still voted in on the Tamil vote. Interestingly, Maithripala Sirisena, in the final stages of May 2009, was also celebrating with Mahinda Rajapaksa over a war victory. Furthermore, in the final 2 weeks of the May 2009 conflict, Sirisena, the current president, was actually the Minister of Defence at the time. So there are certain questions raised in terms of if an accountability process does go through in the future, how does this actually fructify? So the new government has actually made some progress though. So it has restored some sense of rule of law, and it has changed its approach to engagement with the international community. So now we will see that the Ministry of External Affairs is actually engaging well with the international community. So far as such that we have seen Mangala Samawira visit the US and speak to the Secretary of State John Kerry, and we've seen the new president visit the new Prime Minister, David Cameron. So even though there are some signs of progress, what's interesting is the reaction in the Tamil North and East. So the reaction of actually what the new government claims to be reconciling with. So the sentiment in the Tamil North and East. The Northern Provincial Council, which was elected into power in 2013, immediately after the new President Sirisena was elected, passed a resolution once again reiterating the need for the UN to commit an international investigation into war crimes and what the NPC described as the systematic genocide of Tamils by the Sri Lankan state. So this is a very strong statement to come from the Northern Provincial Council just after a new president was elected in. Similarly, the Northern Provincial Council Chief Minister, C.V. Vigneswaran, was also actually a former Sri Lankan Supreme Court Chief Justice, who is now the Northern Provincial Councillor, has repeatedly made statements where he feels that the international community needs to remain engaged in the situation and needs to pressure the Sri Lankan government to deliver on what they expect of them. He's called for demilitarisation of the North and East because of the potential war criminals that are actually policing the streets. And he's also actually criticised Sinhala leadership, saying that they have no courage to deliver a solution to the Tamils because they are unwilling to face the majority of the South, who, as we saw before, actually voted for Mahinda Rajapaksa. And these calls are not just coming from the North and East, they've been backed by international NGOs like Human Rights Watch, who say the international community needs to stay engaged to see accountability, and even US think tanks, which actually say there is an ongoing silent war against Tamils through military occupation of the North and East. And again, so with the North and East, it's not just political statements that are coming out, so it's not just the Tamil civil society that are releasing statements and political figureheads like the Chief Minister that are releasing statements. We've actually seen mass mobilisation. So the last time the North and East saw protests at this frequent level and to this scale was in May 2009 when the atrocities were happening in the no-fire zone. So the idea that the new government is reconciling with the Tamil people, though I think their statements are very promising, I think what's happening on the ground tells a different story, and I think we need to get behind why this is happening and why there is so much more mobilisation in the new Sirisena governance, despite the fact that the Sri Lankan government statements to the international community seem to be quite promising. And yeah, so the question is it a case of duplicity? So there are several examples of statements externally and statements internally by Sri Lankan officials that contradict their stance. So, for example, the head of the current Presidential Reconciliation Task Force, former President Sri Lanka, in the run-up and after elections, has claimed that she was 75% responsible for the war victory. So now when the Tamil Northeast see themselves disenfranchised as victims, it belies the intention that a reconciliatory task force can forge reconciliation when statements like this are made to the majority populace on the island. Furthermore, the current Prime Minister has assured the Buddhist clergymen that he will keep the security tight in Jaffna, which again goes against the international community calls for the military to be reduced from the north and east. Again, in terms of the international investigation, we've had people say that the international investigation is insulting to people in Sri Lanka, and there's a general consensus where, though when President Maithripala Sirisena meets David Cameron and agrees to delivering on accountability and justice, when actions are taken back on the island, they seem to belie the general rhetoric abroad. So what key themes that have come from the protests and the political statements made by the North and East is that they want the international community to remain involved, and they have no faith in a purely domestic process of reconciliation or of justice or of accountability. Now, the question is how do we tackle this? So I think there are two overlying themes that need to be addressed. So the first is the Sri Lankan polity needs to be prepared to do the hard talk. So a new governance is not something new. So we've had these issues going on for 6 decades, and the repeated downfall when there has been a solution coming close has been the fact that the singular majority they haven't been able to convince the singular majority to actually provide a solution of reconciliation for the whole island. So one thing that needs to happen is hard talk. Now the second thing is, we've seen a new governance, which looks very promising, but we've also seen mass mobilization and discontent in the North and East. So this means that there is not enough confidence building with the Tamil people in the North and East. So I think several things like publicly committing to demilitarizing the North and East, acknowledging and accepting resolutions of the Northern Fringe Council as general sentiment of the people in the North and East, are things that would build confidence. Furthermore, committing to an international justice process as advised by several NGOs and people on the ground in the North and East would again give confidence to the North and East that reconciliation is possible. Releasing a comprehensive list of detainees that surrendered at the end of the war for international assessment is tantamount to actually providing truth in the area. And of course accepting the political sentiment of the Tamil community and recognizing them as an equal and distinct nation within the island, which they have democratically stated several times, and the repealing of the PTA, which allows for certain detentions. So now one of these confidence building measures is actually releasing a comprehensive list of detainees that surrendered from the end of the war. Now this is what actually this main event will be focusing on. So the issue of surrendered and the detained. In 2010, the International Commission of Jurists, in their report at the end, focused on the end of the war, said Sri Lanka's rehabilitation program failed to meet international needs. Now, one of the major criticisms were that when people surrendered to the Sri Lankan army from the no-fly zone at the end, international monitors such as the ICRC weren't given access to lists of people that were detained, and they weren't given access to lists of people that were transferred between camps. So now an estimated 12,000 people were detained. Now, official census figures that were analysed by Tamil Civil Society in the North and East found that there was at least 146,000 people missing when they did an official count in 2010. So if the UN estimates of 70,000 dead are accurate, then that means there are still 70,000 people that are unaccounted for. And the worry about detention in Sri Lanka is there has been documented evidence of a prevalence of torture and arbitrary killings within detention in Sri Lanka. Now, the co-author of the UN Panel of Experts report into Sri Lanka, Yasmin Suka, in a recent report, actually said that sexual violence and torture was predominantly aimed against Tamils in a systematic part of policy in Sri Lanka. And this was just last year. that she made a statement. And this is why the issue of releasing a list to the international community is so important to get the truth and justice. So Sri Lanka has actually currently launched a presidential commission onto missing persons. So again, we've already seen the general sentiment of the Tamil people in the north, and when it comes to this presidential commission, it's a similar story. So when the commission has hosted sittings, though people have participated in Sri Lanka's domestic commission into missing persons, we've also seen mass mobilisation in the last few months. So several families have been protesting, and several think tanks within Sri Lanka, like the Centre for Policy Alternative and the Tamil Civil Society, have also rejected the Domestic Missing Persons Commission as a credible inquiry. And there are further doubts on this commission. So the TNA spokesperson actually this year has been saying that there are credible reports of secret camps within the north and east where several people have been detained there for years. Furthermore, there have been credible reports of families of the disappeared being coerced into signing death certificates for their loved ones. So again, this is another effort to, I think, distribute or to redistribute the numbers of disappeared and dead. So Sri Lanka's Justice Minister this month said that there were only 200 LTTE surrendered cases in custody and that there were no other unauthorised detentions. So there is a huge confusion about the numbers of disappeared and missing persons within Sri Lanka. And actually, in March this year, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, in a public statement said he refuted the UN figures of 70,000 dead at the end of the war in May 2009. So there is a huge problem with any kind of domestic inquiry into missing persons or truth, accountability and justice. So this leads on to a small case study where we're going to have witnesses speaking from. So the white flag incident happened at the end of 2009 in the no-fire zone when, within the final days of the war. So according to whiteflag.org, which is an independent investigative body that looked into the end of the war, they found that several LTT political leaders negotiated an internationally agreed surrender process to hand themselves over to the Sri Lankan army. People involved in this process were Vijay Nambia, the UN Secretary General Special Envoy, Chandrasekhar Nehru, TNA MP, a Sunday Times journalist from the UK, Mary Colvin, and high-level Sri Lankan officials, the Defence Secretary at the time, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Pulithevan, Sri Lanka's Foreign Secretary, who was also a representative at the UN, and Basil Rajapaksa, who was a Rajapaksa brother and a high-level official. So now these reports showed that the political wing leader Nadesan and the Peace Secretariat, Pulithevan, were engaged with the international community, and actually throughout the process of the final stage of the war, they were actually updating journalists with figures of civilians that were dying. So when this final surrender process was agreed, they initially handed themselves over to the Sri Lankan army with a white flag and were assured that they would be safe. But in the end, it was found that evidence came out that they were killed. Now, before they handed themselves over, they reported themselves as having no injuries at all, and when the evidence came from the killings, it was found that there were several burn marks on their bodies and several signs of torture. So with that small case today, I just want to leave you with the pictures of several high-ranking people that handed themselves over at the end of the war. So a lot of these pictures are actually pictures of them within the custody of the Sri Lankan military, and then later on evidence emerged of them killed and tortured. So just to conclude, I think the general consensus of the North and East is one of distrust with any domestic mechanism. And I think a history of failed commissions has shown that international pressure is key in driving change in Sri Lanka, just like this international UNHRC investigation has also shown. So with that, I think we're going to pass on to the next speakers.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is the son of an LTTE political wing leader. I can now, if you'd now like to address us, please.
Thank you. My name is Prabhat. I'm the son of Mr. Nadesan, who was the political head of the LTTE. And I had been in regular contact with my dad at the last stages of the war. in 2009 May. He first mentioned that they were in talks with several parties about the surrender, and at that time he didn't actually mention any details of who he was talking to or anything like that. No, I didn't ask any details about the surrender, but all he was saying to me is like, oh, they were in talks and things like that. And he mentioned that they were looking for guarantee of their lives and also surrender in the presence of like third party. He passed the phone over to my mum, and then he said, "I'll talk to me later." And then that was the last time I spoke to my mum and also my brother. And after that, all of a sudden, on 18th of May 2009, in the early morning, was a desperate call from my dad. And he said that he had spoken to different parties and diplomats, and everything has been arranged for the surrender. And then they've advised him to go with a white flag and surrender to Islam. He also said he wounded cadres and families with him and prepared for the surrender. And I could hear some noises at the background. They were getting ready for like surrender. He said that Mum and the rest of the family were with him at that time. The final word he said is like, "If I don't get back to you sometime, I said something has happened to me." That was the last time I heard from him. Next day, photos of my dad, same day, photos of my dad appeared on the internet. And it was unbearable to see him lying down like that. Later I learned from various mediums and sources that Dad was beaten and then shot. My mom was like very young. And then my mom got shot as well after that. And she was begging and crying for her life in front of my brother and sister. I can't even imagine like how my sister and brother would have gone through when my parents got killed. It's hard for me to like get back to my normal life, but life has to go on. I'm still searching for answers and feel like no one is helping. I really want to know what happened. Why are they not alive today? All of that. Is there a way to justice?
As a weapon to the genocide Tamils. This is a clear war crime. In Sri Lanka, it's not a new phenomenon. The thousands of Tamil peoples have been disappeared in Sri Lanka since the 1980s. A 1999 study by the United Nations found that Sri Lanka had a second highest number of disappearances in the world. In the year 2009, an estimated 18,000 Tamils alongside political leaders of the LTTE Mr. Nadesan and Pulithevan surrendered to the Sri Lankan security forces. 6 years on, there is still no knowledge to the whereabouts of these Tamils, even though the bodies of some leaders found. What happened after others is million-dollar questions. The Pasumai Thaayagam and Patali Makkal Kachi under the leadership of Dr. S. Ramaraj and on behalf of people of Tamil Nadu, we always strive hard to expose these things in the international platform. This event is our another effort to get justice for victims. We request the United Nations and the United Nations Human Rights Council and other human rights organizations to expedite the process to convict the war crimes of Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Social justice and environmental protection for over 30 years. But I must say that I was very shaken by the brutal accounts of human rights abuses in Sri Lanka. Horrific crimes have been committed with total impunity by police, armed forces and the Sri Lanka government. And some of the testimonies that we heard today are an example of what happened in Sri Lanka during those terrible years. I'd like to tell you that I myself have listened to witness account of people, young people who were abducted, who were tortured, who were raped, and who suffer multiple rapes. The theme of today's panel event in the case of detainees and disappearances in Sri Lanka, enforced disappearances defined as an unacknowledged arrest of an individual by state authorities in which the person's location, conditions on treatment is not reported, and placing the individuals outside of legal protection have been the rigor in Sri Lanka. I don't think that I need to say more to try to convince you. The International Committee on the Red Cross reported that the peak of enforced disappearances was reached in 2003. The ICRC received 20,000 complaints of disappearances during the course of Sri Lanka ethnic conflict. Of those, 9,000 cases have been resolved. Many of the missing people been traced to prisons and detention centers. 11,000 cases remain unresolved until today. The available evidence points to an organized government plan at the highest level not to accept the surrender of the top civilian, administrative and political leadership of the LTTE, but rather to execute them. In the immediate aftermath of the surrenders, the Sri Lanka government presented a number of contradictory explanations for the killings of the political leaders, but no explanation for the other people who disappeared. When the United Nations Human Rights Council met last year, they passed resolution AHRC 25-1, requesting that the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights undertake a comprehensive investigation into alleged serious violations and abuses of human rights and related crimes by both parties in Sri Lanka during the period covered by the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, LLRC, and to establish the facts and circumstances of such alleged violations of the crimes perpetrated with a view to avoiding impunity and ensuring accountability with assistance from relevant expert and special procedures mandate holders. I feel, sadly, that this has not been complied until today. In 2014, the Council issued a resolution that called upon the government of Sri Lanka to cooperate with the offices of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Such a cooperation requires freedom of movement throughout the territory, unfettered access to all places and establishments, freedom to meet and interview representatives of national, local and military authorities, community leaders, non-governmental organizations and other institutions, and any such persons whose testimony is considered necessary for the fulfillment of its mandate and free access to all sources of information, including documentary material and physical evidence. The investigation looked into the period from the 21st of February 2002 until the 15th of November 2011. During this period, there was an internal armed conflict making necessary the application of international humanitarian law, in particular provisions of the Geneva Convention relevant to non-international armed conflicts, to measure the conflict in the conflict of both the government and non-state armed groups and international criminal law. To their incidents and events under investigation is determined whether crimes have been perpetrated. The OHCHR's report needs to address issues of enforced disappearances, torture, use of rape as a weapon of war, civilian targeting, and mass killing of prisoners of war. In November 2014, the UN High Commissioner criticized the continuing efforts of the Sri Lanka government to thwart the OHCHR investigation, including the distortion of facts and the persistent intimidation of individuals who may wish to cooperate with the investigation. The High Commissioner also pointed to instances of surveillance and harassment of Sri Lankan civil society organizations and human rights defenders with the objective to deter people from submitting evidence. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's own investigation, which published its report in 2011, titled Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, is a staggering whitewash and reveals the culture of impunity that surrounds the state on its military. The report expresses satisfaction that the military strategy was adopted to secure the light Tamil held area was one that was carefully conceived, in which the protection of the civilian population was given the highest priority. The time is now critical for the Sri Lanka government to allow an impartial and credible international independent investigation as a prerequisite to achieving justice and reconciliation. There will be no reconciliation until justice is done. Arrest, alleged tortures and disappearance continue to plague Sri Lanka. The country's Prevention of Terrorist Act has been used to silence critics. Last year, under the Act, two of the country's prominent activists, Ruki Fernando of the Colombo base, informed, and Father Praveen Mahesan, a Catholic priest, were arrested in Kilinochchi on March 16 and were detained without formal charges. And you can find that on the website that I can provide to you. In response to this arrest, Brad Adams, Asia Director of Human Rights Watch, has said the arrest of these human rights defenders showed just how important it is for the international community to stand up for human rights in Sri Lanka. This is a critical moment for the future of Sri Lanka. In order for the human rights situation in the country to improve, there must be an end to the total culture of impunity. I hope that the presidency of Sirisena will mark a new beginning and a true reconciliation between the people of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much.